Donald Trump sat across from Ilhan Omar in a historic Senate hearing, armed with a briefcase of evidence, ready to dismantle her career on live television. She stood in the House chamber and screamed, "You are a liar," right at the President of the United States. 60 million people watched. She thought she was brave. He thought she was guilty. One of them was right. This administration has called my people garbage, called me garbage, and now they drag me into this room to answer for the crime of being Somali in America. Ilhan Omar was standing at the witness table in the Senate hearing room, her finger pointed at the committee dais, shaking with the practiced fury of a woman who had turned outrage into a career. Hijab, blazer, a gallery packed with CAIR representatives, and "Stop the Witch Hunt" signs. "I receive 300 death threats a week," she continued, holding up her phone. "They tell me to go back to Africa. They tell me they will put a bullet in my hijab. And the President of the United States encourages it every single day." She paused, letting the gallery applause wash over her, then dropped her voice. The crack, the vulnerability, the refugee story. She had given this speech 100 times, and it worked every single time. "I came to this country at 8 years old, 4 years in a refugee camp. I didn't speak English. My family had nothing. We came to America because we were told it was the one place where a girl from a refugee camp could serve in Congress." She straightened, steel replacing tears. "I am the American dream, and I will not be intimidated by." The door behind the dais opened. Secret Service agents entered. First 2, then 4, then 6. The gallery went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The way a room goes silent when something unprecedented is about to happen, and everyone can feel it before they can see it. Donald Trump walked through the door and sat down at the committee table directly across from Ilhan Omar, 6 feet away. A sitting president had never, not once in the history of the Republic, sat across from a member of Congress in an adversarial hearing. It had never happened because it was never supposed to happen. Donald Trump had walked through 250 years of precedent like it was a revolving door. Omar's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: surprise, fury, fear. She buried the third one fast, but the C-SPAN cameras caught it. Trump didn't adjust the microphone. He didn't open a folder. He looked at Omar the way a man looks at a parking ticket. "You called me a liar at the State of the Union," he said, conversational, almost friendly. 60 million people heard it. Very dramatic. Great television. So I figured, why not come down here and let you say it to my face? An aide placed a thick briefcase on the table beside him. Trump patted it once. "And then I show everybody who the real liar is. Let's go, Congresswoman. I've got a lot to show you." Trump opened the briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He held it up like a man showing a speeding ticket to a judge. $19 billion, he said. "That is how much has been stolen from American taxpayers in your state. Not my number. That is the U.S. Attorney's estimate, 19 billion, with a B, from Minnesota. Your state, your district, your people." He set the paper down and looked at Omar. "You know what the GDP of Somalia is? About 8 billion. Your community stole more from American taxpayers than your entire homeland produces in a year. That's honestly kind of impressive. In a terrible way." A few nervous laughs came from the gallery. Trump didn't smile. He was already reaching for the next document. "Feeding our future. $250 million stolen from a federal child nutrition program. Fake meal sites, invoices for millions of meals that were never served to children who didn't exist. The money went to luxury cars, real estate, travel overseas, 70 people charged. Over 90% of them, and this is from the U.S. Attorney's office, not me, over 90% of Somali descent." He held up his hand before Omar could speak. "Now, you were going to say the mastermind was Amy Bach, a white woman." I know you've said it 100 times, and you were right. She's the mastermind. She's going to prison. But here is what you don't say. He pulled out an email, printed, flagged, date stamped. This is an email from your legislative aide to 3 Feeding Our Future site operators, dated the 12th of March 2022. Weeks before the Meals Act you co-sponsored was signed into law. He read, "The Congresswoman bill will expand emergency feeding eligibility significantly. Begin preparing additional site applications now. The window will open fast." He set the email down. Your office tipped them off before the law was even signed. Your aide was telling the fraudsters to get ready. You built the door, your office told them when it would open, and they walked through it with wheelbarrows. Omar erupted. I had no knowledge of that email. Your staff works for you, Trump said. When my employees do something wrong, they say Trump told us to. When your employees tip off fraudsters, you say, I didn't know. Interesting how that works. He pulled out another document. Campaign finance records. 7 individuals who were later indicted in Feeding Our Future cases donated to your campaign between 2019 and 2021. Total donations, $48,000. He fanned the donation records across the table like a poker hand. Abdiaziz Farah donated $5,000 in March 2020, indicted for wire fraud, August 2022. Kamar Hassan donated $2,000 in November 2020, indicted for money laundering, August 2022. Abdimajid Noor donated $3,000 in June 2021, indicted for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He looked up. 7 donors, 7 indictments, all from the same fraud ring, all giving money to the same Congresswoman. That's not a coincidence, Congresswoman. That is a client list. Omar's lead attorney stood. My client returned every one of those donations proactively after the indictments, Trump said without looking at the lawyer. Not before. Not when the fraud was happening. Not when the FBI was investigating. After, when the names were public, when the press was watching, when keeping the money would have been too obvious, even for you, he looked at Omar. You returned the money, and your spokesperson said, and I love this phrase, I really do, out of an abundance of caution. You know what that means in English? It means, oh crap, the FBI found out. 2 Democratic aides in the back of the gallery stood up simultaneously, exchanged a look, and walked out together. One of them was on her phone before she reached the door. Trump pulled out a printed list. But Feeding Our Future is just the big one. There's also childcare fraud, $3.5 billion. Education fraud, $2.1 billion. Housing assistance fraud, $1.8 billion. Healthcare fraud, $800 million. All in Minnesota, all centered in the Somali community. All discovered after 2020. He added them up on his fingers slowly for the listeners. 3.5 plus 2.1 plus 1.8 plus 0.8 plus Feeding Our Future as $250 million. That is over $8 billion just from the ones we've found so far. The U.S. Attorney says the real number could be double that. He set down the list. You've been in Congress since 2019. 7 years. Your district has generated more fraud per capita than any congressional district in American history. And your response every single time someone asks you about it is to call them a racist. He leaned forward. 19 billion isn't racist, Congresswoman. It's arithmetic. And the arithmetic says your district is the fraud capital of America. Omar's face was rigid. These are complex social service programs that were exploited during a pandemic. Fraud happens everywhere. Not like this, Trump interrupted. Not $19 billion worth. Not in one state. Not in one community. Not overseen by one congresswoman who wrote the legislation that made it possible. He tapped the email, and whose staff sent the invitation. He closed the first section and reached for the next. But the 19 billion is other people's fraud. Let's talk about yours. Trump pulled out a financial disclosure form and held it up. 2018. The year you entered Congress. Your financial disclosure shows you were basically broke. Negative net worth. You owed more than you owned. I get it. A lot of people start that way. I didn't, but a lot of people do. He pulled out another form, 2024. 6 years later. Household net worth between $6 million and $30 million on a salary of $174,000 a year. He looked at the committee. I'm a billionaire. I know how money works. And I'm telling you, you don't go from broke to 30 million on a congressional salary. You don't do it legally. Anyway, he pulled out FEC records. Let's start with Tim Minette, your boyfriend, then your husband. His consulting company, the E Street Group, received $2.78 million from your campaign. $2.78 million from the donations of working people who sent you $10, $20, because they believed in you. Trump paused and shook his head. I've been through 3 divorces. Very expensive. Beautiful women. Very expensive divorces. But I paid for mine with my own money. You paid for your love life with campaign donations from people who make $12 an hour. He pulled out divorce records. Beth Minette, Tim's first wife, filed for divorce in 2019. In the filing, she said her husband told her he was having an affair with you. She said under oath that he told her, quote, "Don't worry about money. Ilhan's campaign is covering everything." He set down the divorce record and picked up receipts. And here, everything. Romantic dinners for 2 in Nice, France, charged to your campaign. Hotel suites in cities with no campaign events. Your campaign, a couple's spa in Napa Valley. Your campaign, 8 trips, totaling $21,000, listed as travel expenses with no names, no dates, no purposes. Just E Street Group, the company owned by the man you were sleeping with. Omar's lead attorney leaned forward. The FEC reviewed these matters and found they couldn't prove intent. That's not the same as innocent, Trump said. That's the same as we know you did it. But our lawyers say we can nail you. I've dealt with a lot of investigations. I know the difference. He reached for the next section. But $2.78 million is the old money. Let's talk about the new money. The mystery money. He pulled out both financial disclosures side by side. 2023. Your husband's companies, a winery called East Crew and a venture capital firm called Rose Lake Capital, are worth a combined $51,000. 1 year later, 2024, they reworth between $6 million and $30 million. He looked at the camera. Not at Omar. At the camera. Because Trump always knew where the real audience was. 51,000 to 30 million in 1 year. That's a 588 times return. You know who gets 588 times returns? Nobody. Not me. Not Warren Buffett. Not anybody who isn't cheating. He pulled out a lawsuit filing. And speaking of cheating, Naeem Mohammed. Is Mr. Mohammed here today? A man stood up in the gallery. 50s, well-dressed, angry. Mr. Mohammed invested $300,000 in your husband's winery, Trump said. He was promised 200% returns in 18 months. He never got a dime. He says your husband used the money to buy a house, the house you live in. They stole my money, Mohammed shouted. $300,000. My children's college fund. Tim Minette told me his wife in Congress would guarantee the business succeeded. Security moved toward him. Trump raised a hand. Let the man speak. He's the victim, she's the defendant. He told me having a congresswoman as a partner meant government contracts. Mohammed continued, his voice breaking. He used her name to get my money, and she lives in the house it bought. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, Trump said. Sit down. We'll make sure you get your day in court. He turned back to Omar. Your husband used your name, your position, and your title to defraud an investor, and you live in the house the fraud paid for. In real estate, that S called proceeds of crime. He pulled out another lawsuit. But Mr. Mohammed isn't the only victim. EST Ventures, another company connected to your husband and his partner William Haler, was sued by South Dakota cannabis companies for failing to deliver on fundraising commitments. The firm admitted to owing investors over $1 million. He set down both lawsuits side by side. Two companies, two fraud lawsuits. Same people, same pattern. Promise big returns. Take the money, disappear. One time is a mistake. Two times is a business model. He pulled out a printed article. And who is William Haler? Your husband's business partner. Let me tell you about Mr. Haler. He worked for Keith Ellison, the man whose congressional seat you inherited. He worked for the Democratic National Committee. He's a Democratic operative who went from politics to venture capital with your husband. Their first company together was E Street Group, the one your campaign paid $2.78 million. Then they started a winery, then a venture capital firm, then both got sued for fraud. He looked at the committee. It's a family operation. A political operative meets a congresswoman as husband. They start a consulting firm. The congresswoman's campaign pays the consulting firm millions. Then they start other businesses using the congresswoman's name and position to attract investors. When the investors don't get paid, they sue. And through all of it, the congresswoman's net worth goes from 0 to 30 million. He turned to Omar. You say you have no involvement in your husband's business, but you listed his company's income on your financial disclosure. You live in the house his investors' money bought. Your name was used to recruit investors, and your campaign was the first client that made all of it possible. Trump paused and shook his head slowly. I'm a businessman, Congresswoman. I've built buildings, hotels, golf courses, casinos. I've made money, and I've lost money. But I've never used public office to funnel taxpayer-funded campaign donations to my spouse's company. That's not business. That's a racket. But Trump wasn't done with the money. He was saving the best for last. Now, Congresswoman, I want to be very respectful about this next part, he said, and the way he said respectful made everyone in the room understand he was about to be anything but. Your faith. Very important to you. You've told us many times. You wear the hijab. You observe Ramadan. You married your husband in an Islamic ceremony. Islam is your identity, your brand, your shield against criticism. He paused. Your husband owns a winery. He makes wine. He sells wine. He's being sued over wine. And in Islam, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm Presbyterian, alcohol is haram. Forbidden. Not a gray area, not a well, maybe. Flat out, forbidden. He looked at her. You lecture America about respecting Islam every single day, and you profit from alcohol sales every single night. That's not faith, Congresswoman. That's a Halloween costume. You put it on when it's useful, and take it off when the money comes in. Omar exploded from her chair. You are attacking my faith. You, a man who has never set foot in a mosque, who has called for banning Muslims from this country. You dare. I'm reading your financial disclosure, Trump said calmly. You listed the winery income, not me. You. If your God says alcohol is forbidden and your tax return says you profit from it, That is between you and him. I'm just the messenger." The gallery was in chaos. CARE representatives shouting, the chairman gaveling, Omar's attorneys pulling at her arms. Trump sat through it with the patience of a man who had survived 2 impeachments, 4 indictments, and an assassination attempt. When the room finally quieted, he reached for the next section. "But the money is just the beginning, Congresswoman. Let's talk about who you married. And I don't mean Tim Minette." The hearing room went from chaos to silence in 3 seconds. Everyone knew what was coming. It had been whispered about for 7 years, investigated by journalists, denied by Omar, dismissed as conspiracy theory by her allies. And now the President of the United States was about to say it out loud, on camera, with evidence. "Ahmed Nur said Elmi," Trump said, "your brother." Omar's response was immediate and fierce. "That is a debunked conspiracy theory promoted by racists. And is it?" Trump pulled out a stack of documents so thick it landed on the table with an audible thud. "Because I've got about 200 pages here that say otherwise." An aide helped, placing each exhibit in order. 2009. You legally married Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi. A legal marriage certificate filed with the state of Minnesota. At the time, you were already living with Ahmed Hirsi, the father of your 2 children, so you had a cultural husband and a legal husband, living at the same address. He held up a lease agreement, same apartment, Columbia Heights, Minnesota. All 3 names on the utilities. There's nothing illegal about Omar started. Hold on. I'm getting to the illegal part. Trump held up a British educational record. This is from a school in the United Kingdom where Mr. Elmi attended. Father's name listed Nur Saeed Elmi. He held up another document. This is your family's refugee application from 1995. Your father's name, Nur Said Elmi. He looked at the committee. Same father. Same name. Same family. Either it's the world's biggest coincidence, or he-s her brother. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in documents. He pulled out printed screenshots. Social media. Mr. Elmi's Instagram, 2013. He refers to your daughter as his niece, not stepdaughter. That's what she'd be if he were just your husband. Niece. Because she's his niece. Because he's your brother. He pulled out another document. The Daily Mail. Not my favorite paper, but they do good work sometimes. Asked you to take a DNA test in 2019. Simple test, cheek swab, takes 5 minutes. If Elmi is not your brother, the test proves it instantly. Case closed forever. He looked at Omar. You refused. I don't have to prove. You refused multiple times, Trump continued over her. And every time you refused, you called the people asking racist. Funny how that works. Every time someone gets close to the truth, you pull out the racism card like a get-out-of-jail-free card. He reached for the document he'd been saving. But here's the one that matters. He held up a printed email. The room went still. This is an email from Mr. Elmi to you. 2011. Retrieved from government servers through a FOIA request. Date stamped, authenticated. Your office was notified of its existence 3 days ago. Trump read slowly, every word a nail. Thanks for helping me get papers, sister. I'll make sure to pay you back when I get to London. He set the email down. Sister. Not wife. Sister. And your response, which is on the next page. He turned the page. No need to pay back. Family helps family. Just be careful and delete these emails. The hearing room erupted. A Democratic committee member said, Jesus Christ, loud enough for every microphone in the room to capture it. Omar's lead attorney dropped his pen. A CARE representative in the gallery sat down so hard his chair scraped backward. Delete these emails, Trump repeated. She told her brother to delete the evidence. But government servers have long memories, Congresswoman. Longer than yours. Omar was shaking. That email is fabricated. It's from the State Department's own servers, Trump said. Sue them if it's fake. I'll pay for the lawsuit myself. He wasn't done. But I have something even better. An aide connected an audio device to the hearing room's speakers. This is a recording from a Minneapolis community meeting in 2010. A community elder, a woman named Fadumo Hassan, 84 years old, respected in the Somali community for over 40 years, was recorded by another attendee. An elderly woman's voice filled the room, speaking in accented English. We all knew. Everyone in the community knew Ilhan married her brother to get him papers. It was not a secret. She came to me and asked if I would be a witness at the ceremony. I said no. I told her it was haram. It was wrong before God and wrong before the law. She did it anyway. And now, she sits in Congress and pretends it never happened. The recording ended. The silence that followed was physical. You could feel it pressing against the walls. 84 years old, Trump said quietly. 40 years in your community. A woman who knew your family in Somalia before you came here. And she's willing to testify under oath. Omar's voice was barely audible. She's a liar. She's been paid by... Who? Me? Trump actually laughed. I don't even know her. She contacted the committee on her own. She said she couldn't stay quiet anymore. Her words? Not mine. He pulled out the tax returns. And then there's the tax fraud. 2014 and 2015. You filed joint tax returns with Ahmed Hirsi, the man you were living with, while being legally married to Ahmed Elmi, your brother. Filing jointly with someone you're not married to is tax fraud in Minnesota. The Campaign Finance Board fined you $3,500 plus a $500 penalty. He set down the returns. You committed immigration fraud by marrying your brother. You committed tax fraud by filing with a man you weren't married to. And when you got caught, you called everyone who questioned you a racist. He looked at her with something that wasn't quite contempt and wasn't quite pity. The tears don't change the tax returns, Congresswoman, and the racism card doesn't change the email your brother wrote. Sister, you wrote, delete these emails. Those are your words, not mine. He reached for the last section of his briefcase. The thickest one. But immigration fraud isn't even the worst part. Let's talk about September 11th, because that S when you showed America who you really are. Trump's demeanor changed. The showman vanished. The comedian vanished. The nicknames vanished. What replaced them was something the hearing room hadn't seen before and wouldn't see again. Donald Trump, completely still, completely serious, speaking without a trace of performance. Before I begin this section, he said, I want to acknowledge the families in the gallery. He turned to face them. In the third row, a group of 15 people sat together. Some were elderly, some were middle-aged. All of them wore pins with photographs. Young faces frozen in time, smiling in pictures taken months or weeks or days before September 11th, 2001. These are the families of 9 over 11 victims, Trump said. I invited them here today because what I am about to discuss involves the worst day in American history. And the people who lived through it deserve to be in the room when we talk about it. He turned back to Omar. The room was absolutely silent. March 2019. A CARE fundraiser. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, an organization founded by individuals connected to Hamas, according to FBI evidence presented in federal court during the Holy Land Foundation trial. You were the keynote speaker. He played the video. Every screen showed Omar at a podium, smiling, speaking to a cheering crowd. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. Trump paused the video. Some people did something. That's how you describe the murder of 2,977 Americans, not terrorists. Some people. Not a coordinated attack that killed firefighters, police officers, paramedics, mothers, fathers, children, something. Like it was a traffic jam, like it was a scheduling conflict. He pulled out a printed post. But maybe that was just a bad choice of words. So let's look at your other words. He read, September 11th, 2013, the anniversary of the attacks. You wrote on a Somali language forum, Americans overreact to 9/11. More people die from medical errors every year. They use it as an excuse for their imperialism. He set it down and picked up another. 2012. A tweet. Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. Hypnotized. The Jews have hypnotized the world. That is not criticism of Israeli policy, that is an anti-Semitic trope from the Middle Ages. Another document, February 2019. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. American Jews buy Congress with money. Another anti-Semitic trope. Your own speaker, Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, forced you to apologize. 2 weeks later, you said members of Congress push for allegiance to a foreign country. Dual loyalty. Another trope. 3 anti-Semitic statements in 7 years, each one followed by an apology, and then a repetition. He set down all 3 documents in a row, but those were public statements. Here, what you said in private. An aide connected another audio file. This is from a private fundraiser in Minneapolis, March 2019, recorded by a donor who was disturbed by what she heard. Omar's voice filled the room. The Jewish members of Congress, they can be trusted on anything related to the Middle East. They have divided loyalties. They put Israel first, America second. We need to watch them carefully and counter their influence. Several people in the gallery gasped. 2 Jewish committee members looked like they'd been struck. Divided loyalties, Trump repeated. Watch them carefully. Counter their influence. Those aren't policy disagreements. Those are the words used to justify pogroms in Russia, the Dreyfus affair in France, and the Holocaust in Germany. He pulled out printed screenshots. Group chat messages recovered from a phone seized during an unrelated investigation, and here, the worst one. This is from a WhatsApp group chat with political activists after your "some people did something" comment caused controversy. You wrote, he read slowly, letting every word burn. The American obsession with 9/11 is useful. Use their guilt against them. Every time they question us, bring up Islamophobia and discrimination after 9/11. Make them feel bad for their reaction, rather than the attack itself. The 9/11 families in the gallery reacted not with shouting, with something worse, the sound of people trying not to cry and failing. A man in his 60s stood, his voice shaking with a grief that 2 decades hadn't diminished. My daughter was 23 years old. She worked on the 94th floor of the North Tower. She called me at 8:51 inches the morning. She said, "Daddy, something happened. I love you." That was the last time I heard her voice. His hands were trembling. And this woman sitting right there, she told people to use my daughter's death, to use my guilt as a political weapon. A woman 2 seats over stood. She was holding a photograph. A young man in a firefighter's uniform. My son was 26, engine company 40. He went up the stairs while everyone else was coming down. They found his helmet on the 44th floor. They never found him. Her voice broke. And she says some people did something. My son wasn't something. He was a hero. And the people who killed him weren't some people. They were terrorists. A third person stood. An elderly woman, small, white-haired, clutching a laminated photograph to her chest. My husband worked at Cantor Fitzgerald, 68th floor. 658 of his colleagues died that morning. 658 from one company. And this congresswoman writes, Americans overreact to 9/11. The gallery was dissolving. Reporters in the press section had stopped typing. 2 camera operators were wiping their eyes. A Capitol police officer standing by the door, a 20-year veteran who had worked security on September 12, 2001, was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, blinking too fast. Sir, Trump said quietly to the families. I'm sorry. Please sit down. She's going to answer for it. I promise you, she's going to answer for all of it. They sat. The woman with the firefighter-s photograph held it against her chest like a shield. Trump turned to Omar. All the showmanship was gone, all the comedy, all the nicknames. What was left was a man who had been in Manhattan on September 11th, who had watched the towers fall, who had known people in those buildings. I was in New York that day, he said. I watched the towers come down from 4 miles away. I sent my people to help, my construction workers, my equipment, for weeks. I know what Ground Zero smelled like. I know what it looked like when they found a shoe and couldn't find the person who wore it. His voice was barely above a whisper. 2,977 people. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, atheists, Americans. And you. You sit in the United States Congress. You collect a paycheck funded by American taxpayers, and you call it something that some people did. He pointed at her. Say the word right now into that microphone. Say Islamic terrorism. Say it. Omar's that frozen. Say it, Trump repeated. You've been in Congress for 7 years. You've given 1,000 speeches. You've called America an oppressor. You've called Israel a terrorist state. You've called me every name in the book. But you have never, not once in 7 years, said the words Islamic terrorism. Not once. He waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Omar didn't speak. She cannot say it, Trump said to the committee. She cannot say the words. The people who murdered nearly 3,000 Americans, she cannot name what they were. She calls everyone else a terrorist. Israel, America, me. But the actual terrorists, the ones who flew planes into buildings, just some people. He turned to the Imam. Imam Abdi Salam Adam of the Islamic Center of Minneapolis is here today. He asked to read a statement. The Imam, an elderly man in the gallery, stood. His voice was calm, dignified, and carried the weight of genuine moral authority. I have counseled Congresswoman Omar repeatedly about her rhetoric. I have explained that her words bring shame upon all Muslim Americans who love this country. Her minimization of 9/11, her refusal to clearly condemn terrorism, her constant portrayal of Muslims as victims, even when Muslims commit violence, she damages our entire community. She does not represent Islam. She represents only her own hatred and ambition. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us to speak the truth, even when it is difficult. The truth is that what happened on September 11th was terrorism. It was committed by Muslims who betrayed our faith. And any Muslim who cannot say that is not protecting Islam. They are betraying it. The Imam sat down. The moral weight of his words. A Muslim leader condemning a Muslim congresswoman on camera in a Senate hearing was devastating in a way that no amount of political maneuvering could match. Trump looked at Omar. Your own imam? The spiritual leader of your own community. He says you bring shame to Muslims, and he can say the word, you can. Omar's eyes were wet, but the tears were different now, not the practiced tears of a politician playing the victim card. These were the tears of a woman watching the walls close in and realizing that the door she usually escaped through, the racism door, the Islamophobia door, the identity door, had been locked from the outside. We're almost done, Congresswoman, Trump said, reaching for the final section. Just one more thing. Trump stood up. He was tall, broad-shouldered, impossible to ignore, even when he was standing in a hearing room where everyone else was seated. He blocked the light. He became the only thing in the room. Let me put this all together, he said, because people listening at home need to hear it in one shot. He counted on his fingers, one finger at a time, slowly, so the audience could follow. 1. Immigration fraud. You married your own brother to get him U.S. citizenship. You filed taxes with a man you weren't married to. The email says sister. Your own community elder confirms it. You refused a DNA test multiple times. Second finger. 2. Tax fraud. Joint returns with Hersey while legally married to Elmi, fined by the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board. Used campaign funds to pay your divorce lawyer, so donors paid to clean up your immigration scheme. Third finger. 3. Campaign finance fraud. $2.78 million to your boyfriend's company. Romantic trips funded by donors. 8 unitized travel expenses with no names and no dates. Fourth finger. 4. Enrichment through fraud. Net worth goes from 0 to 30 million in 6 years. Husband's companies explode in value from 51,000 to 30 million in 12 months. Husband sued for defrauding investors. You live in the house the fraud money bought. Fifth finger. 5. Enabling the largest welfare fraud in American history. Your office tipped off feeding our future operators before your bill was signed. 19 billion stolen from taxpayers. Donations from indicted fraudsters flowing to your campaign. Sixth finger. 6. Anti-Semitism. Israel has hypnotized the world. It's all about the Benjamins, allegiance to a foreign country, removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee, condemned by your own party leadership 3 times. Seventh finger. 7. Contempt for 9/11. Some people did something. Private messages telling activists to use their guilt against them. Americans overreact. Your own imam says you bring shame to every Muslim in America. He put his hands down. 7. 7 categories of fraud, deception, hatred, and betrayal. From a woman who came to this country as a refugee and was given everything: citizenship, safety, education, opportunity, a seat in Congress, a salary paid by the American taxpayer. He looked directly into the C-SPAN camera. In 2019, at a rally in North Carolina, my supporters started a chant. They chanted, "Send her back." The media went crazy. Democrats went crazy. They said it was racist. They said it was un-American. They said it was the worst thing that had happened in American politics. He turned to Omar. And maybe it was wrong back then, back when all we had were suspicions, back when all we had were questions she wouldn't answer and DNA tests she wouldn't take. His voice dropped. But that was before the email that says sister, before the community elder who says everyone knew. Before 78 million in donor money flowing to her lover. Before 51,000 becoming 30 million overnight. Before the aid email tipping off the fraudsters. before 19 billion stolen from taxpayers, before use their guilt against them. He paused, the longest pause of the hearing. Send her back. My supporters said it because they felt it. They didn't have the evidence. Now they do. And now the question isn't whether the chant was offensive. The question is whether it was right. He turned to the committee chairman. Mr. Chairman, based on the evidence presented today, I formally request that this committee refer the following matters to the Department of Justice: immigration fraud, tax fraud, campaign finance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. I further request that the Director of National Intelligence immediately revoke Representative Omar's security clearance, and I request that the House Ethics Committee open an emergency investigation into all matters discussed today. The chairman nodded. The committee accepts the President's referrals. The Director of National Intelligence has been notified. At that exact moment, and the timing was either coincidence or choreography, the hearing room's speaker system crackled. Attention! By order of the Director of National Intelligence, Representative Ilhan Omar S., security clearance has been revoked. Effective immediately. She is to surrender all classified materials and credentials to the Sergeant-at-Arms. Omar screamed. Not spoke, not shouted. Screamed. This is persecution. This is what you do to black Muslim women in America. This is... Two Capitol Police officers entered the hearing room. Representative Omar, we need to escort you to surrender your credentials. Omar's attorneys grabbed her arms. One was shouting about constitutional rights. The other was trying to get her to stop talking. Omar pulled away from both of them. I will not be silenced. I will not be removed. I am a United States Congresswoman. Not for long, Trump said quietly. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He was packing his briefcase. He was done. An aide rushed to the committee table with a phone. Mr. President, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez just released a statement. Trump took the phone, read it, smiled, then read it aloud to the room. I am shocked and dismayed by the evidence presented today about Representative Omar. While I have defended her right to criticize policy, I cannot and will not defend fraud, corruption, or anti-Semitism. She has betrayed the progressive movement and must resign immediately. Trump set the phone down. AOC. Even AOC. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, "You've gone too far," and believe me, her bar for too far is very, very high. You know it's over. Another phone buzzed. Congresswoman Jayapal. Heartbroken. Cannot defend the indefensible. Another. Senator Sanders. Anti-Semitism has no place in our movement. Another. Speaker Emerita Pelosi. No member of Congress is above accountability. One by one, the dominoes fell. Each statement read aloud. Each one another nail. The woman who had walked into this room as a progressive icon was watching her entire political coalition abandon her in real time. On live television, with 60 million people watching, Omar was led toward the door by Capitol Police. She was still shouting about persecution, about racism, about Islamophobia. The same words she had used for 7 years. The words that had always worked before. The shield that had always protected her. But the shield was broken. The emails had broken it. The recordings had broken it. The testimony had broken it. And now her own allies, the squad, the progressives, the party leadership, had broken it too. At the door, she turned back one last time. Her face was streaked with tears. Her hijab had shifted. Her voice was raw. "This isn't over!" she screamed. "I'll fight this!" "It's over," Trump said, without looking up from his briefcase. "You're redone, Congresswoman. You got here by fraud, and you're leaving by fraud. The only question is which federal court you end up in first. The door closed behind her. The hearing room began to empty. Reporters sprinted for the exits. Phones rang and buzzed and vibrated. The 9/11 families held each other. The K Street lobbyists were already calculating the new political landscape. Trump closed his briefcase, stood, buttoned his jacket, nodded once to the 9/11 families, then he walked out the same door he'd walked in through, surrounded by Secret Service, leaving behind a destroyed career, a stack of evidence, and a room full of people who had just witnessed something that had never happened before and would never happen again. The hearing ended at 4:02 p.m. Eastern. By 4:30, the clip of Trump saying, "Say the word, say Islamic terrorism," followed by Omar's 10 seconds of silence, had been viewed 19 million times. By 5:00, it had crossed 40 million. By midnight, it was the most watched congressional hearing clip in American history, surpassing the Watergate hearings, the Kavanaugh hearings, and the January 6th committee combined. The second clip, the 9/11 father saying, "She told people to use my daughter's death," spread differently. It didn't go viral through political accounts. It went through family accounts, veteran accounts, firefighter accounts, police accounts. It was shared by people who never shared political content, accompanied by captions that said nothing except a date. September 11th, 2001. Fox News ran wall-to-wall coverage for 72 hours straight. Their chyron read, "Exposed Trump dismantles Omar in historic confrontation." CNN, after 4 hours of agonized panel discussion, settled on unprecedented hearing raises serious questions about Representative Omar. MSNBC led with Omar allies call for resignation after devastating evidence presentation. The legal machinery moved with a speed that shocked Washington. The Department of Justice confirmed within hours that it would review all materials presented and take appropriate investigative action. The IRS Criminal Division reopened its file on Omar's joint tax returns. The FBI expanded its existing inquiry into the Feeding Our Future connections. The House Ethics Committee announced an emergency investigation. In Minneapolis, the political earthquake hit hardest. The Minnesota Democratic Farmer-Labor Party released a statement at 9:00 p.m. calling for Omar's immediate resignation. The first time in the party's history, it had called for the resignation of a sitting member. The statement was unanimous. Not a single DFL official dissented. Outside Omar's Minneapolis office, a protest materialized within hours. But it wasn't the usual protest. It wasn't right-wing activists or Trump supporters. It was members of the Somali American community. They held signs that read, "She does not represent us," and "Fraud is not our culture." Imam Abdi Salam Adam led prayers for truth and accountability. A young Somali American woman, tears streaming down her face, told a local news camera, "I was so proud when she was elected. I thought she was proof that someone like us could make it in America. Now I'm ashamed. She made us all look like criminals." The Squad's implosion was total. AOC's resignation call was followed within hours by Rashida Tlaib's, Ayanna Pressley's, and Jamal Bowman's. Even progressive organizations that had defended Omar through every previous controversy released carefully worded statements that all contained the same phrase, "Cannot defend the indefensible." The most devastating blow came from within the Muslim American political community. Congressman Andre Carson of Indiana, the first Muslim member of Congress to call for Omar's resignation, released a statement that was painful in its sincerity. "As a proud Muslim American, I am heartbroken by today's revelations. Representative Omar has damaged our community's reputation and undermined our efforts to combat real Islamophobia. Her actions do not represent Islam or Muslim Americans. She must resign. By 10:00 p.m., Don Samuels, the man who had nearly defeated Omar in the previous primary, announced his candidacy for her seat in a video recorded from his living room in Minneapolis. "This seat belongs to the people of the 5th District," he said, "not to a fraud. I am running to restore integrity, honesty, and trust. The people of Minneapolis deserve better. The Somali community deserves better. America deserves better." The legal machinery accelerated overnight. A federal magistrate signed a warrant authorizing FBI agents to search Omar's congressional office. Only the third time in American history that a sitting member's office had been raided. Tim Mynett's attorneys had been served with expanded subpoenas covering all business records for the past 5 years. The State Department referred the immigration fraud evidence to the appropriate division for review of Omar's naturalization status. And the IRS Criminal Division announced it was reopening its investigation into the fraudulent joint tax returns from 2014 and 2015. Omar's legal team, which had grown from 2 attorneys to 7 in the space of 6 hours, released a statement at midnight, calling the hearing an unconstitutional abuse of presidential power and vowing to fight these politically motivated charges in every available forum. The statement was 12 paragraphs long. It used the word racist 9 times. It mentioned Islamophobia 6 times. It did not address the email from Elmi. It did not address the community elder's testimony. It did not address the WhatsApp messages. It did not explain how household net worth went from $51,000 to $30 million in 12 months. The statement changed nothing. The phrase, "send her back," trended for 72 consecutive hours. But the conversation around it had fundamentally changed. It was no longer a rally chant. It was a legal question. And for the first time, people who had condemned it in 2019 were acknowledging, reluctantly, uncomfortably, that the evidence demanded an answer. Cable news panels that had spent 7 years defending Omar against the "send her back" chant were now struggling with a new reality. On CNN, a visibly uncomfortable analyst said, "Look, I still think the chant was wrong in 2019, but the evidence presented today, the email, the elder testimony, the financial disclosures, those aren't chants. And facts require a different conversation." His co-panelist, a progressive commentator who had called the chant the worst moment in modern American politics, sat in silence for 4 seconds before saying, "I need to see more evidence before I change my position." But her face said she had already seen enough. Donald Trump boarded Air Force One at Joint Base Andrews at 6:45 p.m. The plane was in the air by 7:00. He sat in the president's office at the front of the plane, Diet Coke in hand, 3 television screens showing 3 different networks, all covering the hearing. An aide knocked. "Sir, the ratings are in." Trump looked up. "How'd we do?" 4.8 million live on C-SPAN. 63 million across all platforms in the first 6 hours. It's the most watched hearing in American history. Trump nodded, took a sip. "Bigger than Watergate. Bigger than Watergate." Trump smiled. The smile of a man who had just done what he came to do, and knew it. "Call Hannity. Tell him I'll do 10 minutes tonight. Only 10. Let the evidence do the talking." He paused. "Actually, make it 15. I've got good material." He picked up his phone and posted on Truth Social. "Classic Trump." All caps, where it counted. "Today we expose the most corrupt member of Congress in American history. Immigration fraud. Tax fraud. Campaign fraud. 19 billion stolen from taxpayers. And she called me a liar. The evidence speaks for itself. The American people see the truth." Send her back to court. Make America great again. He set the phone down and looked out the window. 37,000 feet. The country unrolling beneath him in the fading light. Farms, highways, small towns, cities. All of it connected by the idea that the rules applied to everyone. An idea that had taken a beating in recent years. An idea that had maybe gotten a little stronger today. In Minneapolis, in a small apartment in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, a woman named Hale Lima sat at her kitchen table. The same kitchen table where, months ago, she had sat reading Ilhan Omar's financial disclosures and feeling the first crack of disappointment. On the refrigerator behind her, held up by a magnet shaped like the state of Minnesota, was a photograph from 2018. Hale Lima and three friends at Omar's first campaign victory party, holding signs, smiling, crying with joy. A Somali woman in Congress, the first one ever. It had felt like the culmination of every sacrifice. The camps, the ocean crossing, the years of learning a new language in a new country. It had felt like proof that the journey was worth it. Hale Lima stood up. She walked to the refrigerator. She looked at the photograph for a long time. She remembered that night. The music, the crying, the feeling that anything was possible. Then she pulled the photo off the refrigerator. She didn't fold it carefully and put it in a drawer the way she might have done before. She dropped it in the trash can under the sink, and she tied the bag shut. She was done. In New York, in a small apartment in Tribeca, Robert Callahan, the man who had stood in the gallery and shouted about his daughter, sat in a chair by the window. He was holding a framed photograph. His daughter Emily, 23 years old, taken 2 weeks before September 11th at a family barbecue in New Jersey. She was laughing at something her brother had said. She was always laughing. For 25 years, Robert had carried a weight, not just the grief. Everyone who loses a child carries grief. It was the weight of watching people minimize what had happened. Politicians who used the anniversary for photo ops, pundits who said America overreacted, and a congresswoman who called it something that some people did. Today, someone had looked at that congresswoman and said, "Say the word," and she could not. Robert set the photograph on the table beside his chair. He didn't cry. He had cried enough for 25 years. What he felt tonight was different, lighter. Not happiness. Nothing about this was happy, but something adjacent to it. The feeling of a weight shifting, a door opening, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had finally said out loud what he had been screaming inside his chest since September 12th, 2001. His phone rang. His son. "Dad, I saw you on TV. Are you okay?" "I'm okay," Robert said. And for the first time in a very long time, it was true. In a firehouse in Lower Manhattan, Engine Company 10, directly across from where the South Tower once stood, a crew of firefighters watched the hearing replay on a television bolted to the wall of the common room. They watched in silence. These were men and women who drove past Ground Zero every shift, who knew the names on the memorial by heart, who had buried colleagues and friends and brothers and never talked about it, because talking about it didn't bring them back. When the clip reached the 9/11 Father's testimony, she told people to use "my daughter's death." The captain, a 30-year veteran who had been a probie on September 11th and had spent 3 months digging through rubble, stood up and walked out of the room. He went to the apparatus floor, stood next to the engine, put his hand flat against the side of the truck, and breathed. Just breathed for 5 minutes. When he came back, nobody asked if he was okay. They all knew. They had all been breathing like that for 25 years. In a military base in Fort Liberty, North Carolina, formerly Fort Bragg, a young Somali-American soldier named Abdullahi Hassan sat in the barracks day room. watching the hearing on his phone with earbuds in. He had enlisted at 18, he was 22 now. He had deployed once to the Horn of Africa. He loved America. He loved the army. He loved the flag he had sworn an oath to defend. He had also once loved Ilhan Omar. She had been proof that a Somali kid could be anything in America. His mother had cried when Omar was elected. His grandmother had prayed. Now he watched the email. "Thanks for helping me get papers, sister." And he felt something collapse inside his chest. Not his faith in America, his faith in the person who was supposed to represent it. He took out his earbuds, closed the app, looked at the American flag hanging on the day room wall. He was still a soldier. He was still Somali. He was still American. Those things hadn't changed. Only the person he had believed in had changed. He went back to his bunk. He had PT at 0500. The Army didn't stop for hearings, and on Air Force One, 37,000 feet above America, Donald Trump turned off the television, finished his Diet Coke, and closed his eyes. He wasn't sleeping. He was thinking about a hearing room where a congresswoman couldn't say the word terrorism, about a community elder who said, "We all knew," about an email that said, "Sister," about $19 billion that had disappeared into the pockets of people who had come to America and treated it like a crime scene. He thought about his supporters in North Carolina 7 years ago, chanting 3 words that had followed him ever since. 3 words the media called hateful. 3 words the Democrats called racist. 3 words that after today sounded less like a chant and more like a prophecy. The plane flew on through the darkening sky, carrying the president home to Florida, while far below in courtrooms and newsrooms and living rooms across America, the evidence settled in, slow, heavy, and irreversible. They chanted, "Send her back in 2019. The media called it hatred. The Democrats called it racism. She called it persecution. But in a hearing room in Washington, with emails on the screen and witnesses on the stand, and the evidence stacked high enough to see from the cheap seats, America finally understood what the chant really meant. It wasn't about where she came from. It was about what she did after she got there.